Hello, everyone. Welcome to AAPI educational webinar series about asset protection and estate tax planning for physicians. This educational event is hosted uh, by AAPI, and the attendees should consult their own advisors and attorneys for any advice. API, as physicians, we are high risk of getting sued from creditors. I really get, hello?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, you can hear me? Okay. As physicians, we are high risk of getting sued from creditors. So it is very important for us to get more information for asset protection because we don't know which one to implement. To simplify this, we have Mr. Syed Nishat with us. Mr. Nishat is a fiduciary financial advisor and partner at the Wall Street Alliance Group. His articles and interviews about asset protection and common financial mistakes by physicians are published in MedPage Today and Medscape. He is regularly quoted and interviewed in media outlets like Forbes, Kevin MD, US News, Investment News, and Yahoo Finance. We would like to make it more audience interactive, not a long, boring presentation. I will ask questions and Mr. Nishad will answer. You can ask your questions as well in the chat box. Again, please ask your questions in the chat box and we will try to answer them. Mr. Nishad, thank you for coming for this session and helping us with this webinar.
Thank you, Dr. Samadder, and Dr. Sumul Rawal is not here, so thank you him as well for both of you to organize it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Um, okay, before we speak about asset protection, can you please give a quick five last minute tax planning tips for physicians, please?
Yeah, while we're waiting for the audience to come in, I would just like to talk about last 5 important tax planning tip before December 31st, because we only have less than a month left over. So these are the physician, it may help somewhat. Number one, um, is paying the estate tax from the corporation. If you remember, Dr. Samadar, when Trump became president, the maximum state, local, and property tax deduction was 10,000, right? So, but if you have
Yeah.
your own corporation, most of the states passed a law. If you just pay the same state tax from the corporation, for example, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, even your state, Ohio as well, pay the same state tax on the corporation, federally get the full write-off. It is not automatic. You have to elect to do so, and you have to pay all the state tax by the corporation. So number one. Number two, Dr. Samadar, if you need a bigger vehicle, this is a good year to do so. Um, I'm not saying go ahead and buy the car for the sake of it, but if the company, if you ever need a bigger vehicle, the car weigh more than 6,000 pounds, you can write off the full purchase price of the car from the corporation federally, and most likely it's going away. Number three, um, cost segregation for real estate. What I mean by that, a lot of physicians actually invest into real estate. Real estate, there's a depreciation schedule. Uh, for example, residential, the schedule is about 29 year, commercial about 39 year. The schedule is up to you. If you want to bring it down to 5 years, if you own any commercial real estate, residential real estate recently, you can do advanced depreciation. You can start the process by December. So all the rental income you collect, you can actually get to write off if you want to. So again, cost segregation for those physicians have their own property is important. Last two, a charitable contribution. So this is people are like charity minded, before December, you can open up like a donor advice fund. You can speak to the financial advisor about creating like a private foundation or charitable lead trust, remainder trust, a variety of options there. But by December, you can contribute between 30 to 50% of your adjusted gross income, and all money are free tax. And the benefit is the money is in your control. So, for example, Dr. Samadar, a lot of people wants to pledge to API,
Right.
but they don't want to give it to in one go.
Mhm.
They want to see how you do. One option could be that they can open up like a donor advised funds, put $100,000 there. Let's say, for example, they want to give it to API, but they want to give it slowly. By December, they can just put the money into donor advised funds, but the money is in their control. And next year, as API's projects are coming in, slowly they can write a check from the donor advised funds. But again, by December, you need to do it. So again, if you're charity minded, by December, do so. And lastly, defined benefit plan. These are for solo physician. You can open up a 401k, 403b. If you have it to the hospital, do the full deferral by then. The max you can do for 2023, almost 30,000. All money are pre-tax. And defined benefit plan or solo 401k by December, you should adopt it if you want to contribute in that. So again, these are the 5 last minute tax write-off tips, because after December is hard to do so. So just speak to your CPA for this last minute tax planning tips.
Thank you, Syed. On a different note, since you mentioned about donating to API, I think that's a great option. And, API does have the provision where you can make a pledge and you don't have to pay the money right away. And you can pay it in different amounts, and that's kept in a different fund. And the person who's donating it can has a say in how they want to use it, whether they want to use it for medical students or healthcare benefits, or healthcare services in the United States or India, and in how much every year they would like to donate part of their donations to these causes. So, like you said, it would be a good thing to pledge, and anyone can contact us or RP office and let us know about the pledge, and we can put it down. That way, you can get the tax write off this year, but you don't have to pay the whole amount. It's a win win situation for everyone. So, great. Now, for asset protection, first of all, why is asset protection important for physicians?
Yeah, asset protection, Dr. Samadar, it is the main topic for tonight's presentation. It is important. Last time, when we spoke, we spoke about the importance of will and trust. So those audience who are listening, please go ahead and listen to that, because we're not going to talk about estate planning. We'll be mainly talking about asset protection and state taxes today. So asset protection is important for physician. There's a statistics done by AMA recently. 60% of physicians over the age of 55 get lawsuit at least once in their life. And the statistic is quite higher for certain profession like OBGYN and surgeon. So that's why asset protection physician is important. Having said that, a lot of time, Anjana, Dr. Samadar, I went to API, all these events, local events, and I see a lot of presentation, and it's so complicated. Like one of the guy was talking about so many options, like put the house under LLC, do this, do that. Like it was confusing like hell, and charges are enormously expensive. So physicians sometimes get, I would say, burnt by completely confused at what options to use. So today, what we did, we're gonna break it down. What is the starting point, the basic first, then a little bit more advanced, and then finally we'll talk about the advanced planning. But one thing to understand, some of that, there's nothing called 100% asset protection. Like I'm
Right.
talking, you can sue me right now. Sayed Nishad, I don't like the way you look, I'm going to sue you. Go for it. I mean, there's nothing stopping you. So anyone can sue anyone. Nothing stops it. What the asset protection vehicle, the way it works, is imagine that you are wearing a bulletproof jacket and you got shot. You will get hurt, but you're not gonna die. And this is actually a shield, and you will settle somewhere in asset protection vehicle. That's the way to think about it. It is designed for frivolous lawsuit. What I mean by that, if your intention is to do a fraud, nothing will protect you. All right, but if you just get like a lawsuit that completely frivolous, then these vehicles are there, and it is becomes very hard for the other party to get assets from you. So that's the whole idea. With this frame of mind, physicians should start thinking about basic asset protection. How does it work? All right.
Great. We hear so many ideas about asset protection, such as FLP, domestic asset protection trust, and it can be really overwhelming. Can you please explain what is the starting point for asset protection?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the number one question was the starting point. That's the question. What do I have to start? Should I have to go to the lawyer immediately? All right. So the question becomes is the way to think about it is the way we suggest that do something called the basic asset protection starting strategy, which is called low hanging fruit, the way we see it. What are the low hanging fruit? What do you mean by that? What I mean by that is each state that you live in, for example, Dr. Samadar, you live in Ohio. Ohio have their statute. Though there are some statutes out there protect you if you get a lawsuit. Follow those
Mhm.
statutes. For example, there's something called, I'm hovering my mouse, joint tenants by entirety. It's a type of account. It is very simple, no lawyer needed, no cost to it, but there are about 30 to 40 states in the United States that allow this type of account. But you have to understand which states are this. Now, don't ask me, tell me all the states' name. I don't remember. The older I'm becoming, the more I'm forgetting. But you can Google it, and you will. It's always there. You know which states have joint tenants by entirety. Some states have joint tenants by entirety statute for only real estate, not for brokerage account. But just to give you an idea, Florida, it's a good state. In Florida, if you have joint tenants by entirety for real estate or for brokerage account, if you get a lawsuit, it has component of asset protection. Florida, again, I'm giving an example. There's something called a wage account. Again, it's free. In a wage account, all the income you have it, you can put it there for primary source, and it has elements of asset protection as well for wage account. So the first thing first, understand if your state is joint tenants by entirety. If you have it, try to have that kind of account. How does joint tenants by entirety work? The way it works that it's usually between husband and wife. Uh, you cannot change anything, any assets without the consent of other spouse. All right, that's what joint tenants by entirety means. Second simple strategy could be most of the time we are scared that malpractice, like as a physician you may get a lawsuit. One option could be that if your spouse is a non-physician and if you trust your spouse, transfer more asset into that spouse. So for example, if a wife is housewife and the husband is a physician, and one option could be primary house brokerage account, give it to the spouse's name. If a lawsuit happen, it's most likely will happen under the husband's name. But the problem is if a divorce happened, the wife already got everything. So it's something to just worry about, all right? Number three, LLC has elements of asset protection, at least for real estate. So what I meant by that, a lot of times we see people make mistakes, especially physician. They actually have primary house under their own name or joint. I think it's a mistake. I mean, I think logically, if a tenant decide to sue you, they can go after your personal assets. So the best thing would be don't have under your name, have it under LLC's name. If you have multiple property, multiple LLC. Ideally, we would like to see any property value more than 250,000, one LLC. So have LLC for real estate as well if you need it. And number four, there's a lot of investment vehicle out there give you asset protection as well. For example, 401k. It's a lot of asset protection you have it. Cash balance plan, defined benefit plan. Federally is ERISA plan, huge asset protection you have it. 5 to 9 have elements of asset protection. Annuities have asset protection. Insurance have asset protection. IRAs have asset protection, but there's a limit though in IRAs, and you have to check your statutes of the state. Some states say 1.2 million. Just take a look at which your attorney, which one is it. But that's why physician, I think retirement account does make sense, or annuities, if it's not that costly, it does make sense if you have a lot of assets to put money there, mainly for asset protection. And lastly, umbrella policy. Now, one concept about umbrella policy, Dr. Samadar, people think that if a malpractice happen, umbrella will protect you. Remember, umbrella policy only protects if you get in a car accident or a person comes into your house and get into an accident. That umbrella policy covers. It doesn't cover something called malpractice insurance, but still we believe umbrella policy, you should have it at least depending on your net worth, but we recommend about $2 to $3 million umbrella policy for yourself. So these are again, low hanging fruit, not that expensive, not really an attorney needed. Anyone can do it. So this is a good starting point for any physician wants to start asset protection.
Okay, now let's talk about some advanced strategies. Can you please explain what is family limited partnership and how does it work?
All right. Now we spoke about a basic strategy. Now we're going one step up. Some people say, hey, I don't trust my spouse, don't want to do everything to the spouse. Tell me something 50-50. All right. So you can think about something called family limited partnership or limited partnership, almost the same thing. So I'm just giving an example the way the family limited partnership work. There are two components to it. I'm just giving example, Doctor Family LP. There's a general partner and there is a limited partner. General partner has all the liability. Limited partner has no liability. So what we do, we give 2% to the general partner. So you can control whatever want into asset, and 98% goes into a revocable trust as a limited partner. So in this way, a loss would happen, 2% is exposed, 98% is not, nothing to worry about, it's limited partner, you have no say in it. So as long as you don't take distribution from the limited partnership, if a lawsuit happens, most likely you will settle somewhere. That's what we see from the attorney. So again, this could be one step up after you have done the basic asset protection. If you want to do it, it costs about $3,000. It could be implemented similar to an LLC as well nowadays. It's becoming simpler day by day. So LP is one way of going into it if you want to do it. So think about family limited partnership as well as a second step.
Okay, could you please explain what is domestic asset protection trust?
All right. So now we're going one step up, Dr. Samadar. So now I'm going to just pick on you because you're in Ohio. So in Ohio, there's nothing called joint tenants by entirety. And Dr. Samadar, you might be asking, Nishat, can you just tell me what can I do to protect my asset? So in this situation, one option could be Ohio allows something called domestic asset protection trust. It is governed by the statutes of that particular state. Each state has different statutes for domestic asset protection trust. Not all state has it. I have typed it the list in the screen. Alabama, Alaska, Ohio's name is there. But surprisingly, if you see it, you don't see New York there. But so not all states allow domestic asset protection trust. The good thing is it's irrevocable. So that means if irrevocable components means that if a lawsuit happens, since it's irrevocable, the state statute should protect it, the greater protection. But usually there's a waiting time once you put the money into domestic asset protection trust, about 2 years, most of the time. Most states allow. After 2 years, the assets usually have elements of asset protection. So, and it costs money. It's not cheap. So remember, FLP, we spoke about cost about 3,000. This one usually costs about $5,000 to $6,000. Usually you need to have a trustee of that state to manage it. So for example, Ohio, I'm giving an example. You need to have a professional trustee who charge about $2,000 per year to maintain it, and it's about $5,000 to $6,000 to open it. But again, it's very powerful, more powerful, I would say, than FLP or LP or other stuff I spoke about. So domestic asset protection trust, from asset protection point of view, is there as well.
What is the qualified personal residence trust? Is primary house protected everywhere?
Yeah, one of the misconception I think physicians have it that the primary house is protected 100% in each state. It's not correct. All right, there's only a few states that get unlimited asset protection. For example, Texas is one of them. Um, Florida is another one of them. Other state, you need to do something like joint tenants by entirety or something like that to have asset protection. A lot of lawyer says and physician says, I'm not too comfortable by joint tenants by entirety. Do you have something like I have a big house, I want to protect it? So something called qualified personal residence trust. It is similar to the domestic asset protection trust in terms of asset protection is irrevocable. All right. But the good thing is that you can design the qualified personal resident trust in such a way, once you put the money, you actually come up with a lease agreement. lease agreement usually about 10 years, 15 years, however you want to do it. So in this way, you don't own the personal assets anymore, house anymore, and it's irrevocable since you don't own it. If a lawsuit happened, the assets are protected. Now, the way the lease agreement works, every year, certain value of the assets can transfer over to the children, to the next generation. So you can design in such a way with a qualified personal residential trust, the money is out of your state as well for estate tax purpose. So I know maybe I've said a little bit complicated, but the whole gist of it, that qualified personal resident trust, if you want to protect your house if the house is substantially huge and huge amount and you want to do it, and also the money needs to be out of your state, you can consider doing qualified personal residential trust as well. But it's very rare to give full disclosure that I've seen physicians lose their primary house as well. You must have done something very wrong. So I'm trying to explain that you know, all the ideas are there, but not necessarily all the ideas that to implement. You should speak to the attorney and financial advisor, see your circumstances, see how much is the risk factor there before you make a decision.
Great. How about irrevocable trust, and how does it protect the assets?
Yeah, so far, I'm going to go back to the slide. Asset protection trust for qualified personal residence trust, domestic asset protection, that these are also irrevocable too, right?
Right.
But these irrevocable trust, what happened is the nature is irrevocable. The money is not out of your state. One option could be that you can actually gift it via irrevocable trust as well. It's like a plain vanilla irrevocable trust. So, for example, Anjana, you decided my kids, I want to give them money. As long as you don't own it, obviously, you know, if someone sues you, the assets you don't own it, so there's no asset, there's no have to worry about anything. So, one option could be like for your children, create an irrevocable trust and gift the money. Right now, almost $24 million you can gift it the money to your children through an irrevocable trust, and all the money is out of your state. And I'll give one example. Maybe you might be asking the next question, what is the best irrevocable trust? It is called, think about SLAT, SLAT, called Spousal Lifetime Access Trust for gifting purpose. Almost again, 12, 12, 24 million, your money you can gift it, but a lot of physicians say that I am concerned of losing control over it. But in a SLAT, as long as one of the spouse is alive, you do have control over it. As long as one of the spouse, like for example, you know, you gifted, your husband can take money out and give it to you, and you know, because husband wife SLAT allows it. So irrevocable trust is a good way for protect asset as well, and as well as gift the money, and the money is out of your state as well. So hopefully it does make sense what I just explained.
Yeah, like exactly what you're talking about. Can you suggest any type of irrevocable trust where I can gift, but also have asset protection element as well?
Correct.
So, would this be one of them?
This is one of them, could be SLAT,
Okay.
that irrevocable trust. I can give the money, but I do have control over it. The children get the money after I pass away, but as long as the spouse are alive, I do have control over it. So if you're high net worth, you can consider doing SLAT as well for estate tax purpose, but also for asset protection as well.
Great. Can you please let us know what is the Nevada Asset Protection Trust, or how can it help physicians for asset and divorce protection?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to the slide. Remember, we talked about domestic asset protection trust. You can keep reading it on the list. You will see Nevada there. Then you can see Alaska there. You see Delaware there. So off of the whole list of states, Dr. Samadder, we have it. Some states are very strong in terms of asset protection. You must have heard about Delaware LLC, those stuff. You must have heard about, you know, Alaska, Wyoming, all of it. So those states are actually very, very strong in terms of their statute. So what you can do, I'm saying it that you are sitting in Ohio, right? And you say,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, Ohio, I can create my domestic asset protection trust, but you know what? I want the best state for my asset protection. Those are Nevada, Delaware, Wyoming, Alaska. You do not have to be the resident of that state. You can still open up the trust and you can have a trust company be the trustee. But the benefit is that those assets are very strongly protected. Now, one of the assets are, as I explained, Nevada Asset Protection Trust. This is rated as number one for asset protection if you really, really worried about asset protection. The way the Nevada asset protection work, that remember there's something called 2 years provision in asset protection. Nevada, the trailing period starts 6 months. So remember, if you get a lawsuit, nothing can be done. A lot of people say it, but like for example, in Nevada Asset Protection Trust, let's say for example, the tolling period is 6 months when the potential creditors discover the transfer. So it's okay. It gives you that this type of legitimacy. Um, and then in Nevada Asset Protection Trust, you actually have to prove that you actually, made a fraudulent activity in order for the trust actually to release the money. So it's very strong. Just to give you some example. So, and some attorney says that before marriage, if you put money into Nevada Asset Protection Trust, and after that, if a divorce happened, there are elements of divorce protection as well. So the question becomes that do you actually need it, that between you and the attorney? But if you really need some strong asset protection trust, you can consider Nevada, Delaware, Alaska, Wyoming. These states are very strong.
Great. How much does it cost to set up this trust like the Nevada or other asset protection trusts?
Yeah, so unfortunately, these are the more advanced you go, the more expensive is it. So that's why I always recommend cost versus benefit. Is it worth it? Is your net worth worth it? Do you have too much really cash, or are you getting scared for no good reason? If the answer is yes, I have enough assets, I am always worried, only then if it makes sense. If you just have a retirement account, I'm giving an example, and just a house, I mean, think logically, it may not be needed, but if you have like we would like to see you have over a million liquid in cash in the bank, you have a lot of properties you want to protect, and you are in a high risk profession, like, cardiologist or, OBGYN or surgeon, we would like to see high risk profession to protect all these assets. Nevada Asset Protection Trust is more expensive than other domestic asset protection trust. Typically, it costs around $7,000 to set it up, and there's a yearly maintenance fee about $3,000 to $4,000 on top of it. So again, if your net worth is substantial, you can consider these trusts.
Wonderful. What is Series LLC and how does that work?
Yeah. So remember, one of the ideas I spoke about, that physicians should not own real estate under their name. If you have rental income, try to have it for under name of an LLC. But what if you say that I have 20 rental properties? So do you want me to create 20 LLC? No, you don't. With time, a lot of states coming up with something called series LLC. It's like, imagine you have a master LLC, and underneath the master LLC, you have sub LLCs. You have like, like a child LLC. So the tax filing become easier. You just open one LLC. Underneath the LLC, you have 20 real estate. You can have 20 LLC, 1, 2, 3, up to 20, whatever you name it. Unfortunately, not all state has it, but I just put examples for you. Alabama is there. Unfortunately, your state's name is not there, but hopefully with time your states will come in. But with time, more and more states are adopting this series LLC. So again, this is if you only have a lot of real estate, a lot of LLC, you want to simplify it, you can think about series LLC, and it is a little bit more expensive. It's about $1,500 to set it up.
Okay. Does the umbrella policy cover malpractice claim too?
Yeah, a lot of misconception. I think physicians have it. The umbrella, policy cover malpractice. It is not. Umbrella policy usually are for accidental purpose, like car accident, or a person comes to your house and get into an accident. Mainly for that, you need to have your own malpractice insurance. So umbrella policy is for accidental purpose only. So that's why we recommend try to incorporate like other statutes, other investment vehicles out there that has elements of asset protection as well. That's extremely important.
For physicians who are self employed and have employees, what should they do to protect themselves from liability?
Yeah, a few things. A very good question, Dr. Samadar. Sir. We see physician, uh, they do something called locum, a part-time job. They they do as like a individual name, like a solo practitioner. I think from a liability perspective, it's a mistake. Like everything is Schedule C. We always recommend do business as or have an LLC because if you're doing a personal name as a physician, and if a lawsuit happen, you get under your own name. But if you're under an LLC, it gives you the shield that you need. So this is number one mistakes we see it, that if you're self-employed, make sure you have an LLC. If you're doing locum, try to have an LLC as well. We always recommend. Number one. Number two, Dr. Samadar, you'll be surprised to know most of our complaint for physician or lawsuit we get from their employees, like self-employed who are. You'll be very surprised because they are the one they're going to complain the most, the employees. So if you're a self-employed physician, have employees, we have few recommendation. Try to have something called an HR system, like for example, Paychecks or ADP. They have virtual HR. It's pretty decent, very cheap. You can pay them, and they help you comply with the state laws. For example, I'm just giving an example. I was talking to a physician who are saying that they have employee, but the state requires something called I-94. This is for the immigration purpose. Everyone needs to complete, and he forgot about it. So most physicians, don't have time to do all of this. But again, these are state law. You don't want to get fined for doing all of it. So, but if you have a HR system that allows all of it, we also recommend have employee handbook. A lot of physicians who are self-employed have multiple employees, don't have handbook whatsoever. So we always recommend have an employee handbook, put everything there, written there. It doesn't cost too much. The virtual HR people should be able to help you. And you'll be surprised, Dr. Samadar, a lot of people, physician, have 401k defined benefit, and they have employee money, they have their money, and they manage it.
Mm.
So I think it's a mistake. It's employer money, your money, you're combining it together, you're managing it. I think it's a big liability. So at least the employee portion, try to outsource it. Give it to a financial advisor, like, or automated system like American Funds or Fidelity. They can manage it. So you don't want to be the 321, 338 responsibility. A lot of physicians don't think about it because in our genetically in our DNA, we love stock market, and but it doesn't mean you commingle others' money and do whatever you want to do. So these are again few of the things. And last thing I'll talk about is very important. A lot of physicians who are self-employed have employees, don't have employment EPLI insurance, which is called Employment Practice Liability Insurance. One of the recently there was a case, a physician get a lawsuit from the employee, a harassment lawsuit. He was thinking that the umbrella policy will cover it and everything, but nothing covered because the harassment lawsuits and everything, you need to have something called EPLI insurance. It's very cheap to get it. Before the lawsuit happens, try to get it. It's very cheap. They cover up to $1 million, $2 million, the lawyer's fee if that happens. So we highly recommend, if you have employee, try to get an EPLI insurance as well. So these are some of the basic steps for physicians who are self-employed, have employees, to cover themselves.
Thank you. And the last question. If I already have a pending lawsuit, does any of these strategies work or help out?
Yeah, unfortunately, all of this should be implemented before a claim happens because most states have the clawback. So that's why I think it's extremely important to implement the strategies before a lawsuit happens. It doesn't mean that if a lawsuit happens, don't do anything. Still go to the attorney, speak with them, but it works the best before anything goes south. That's why it's very important for physician to sit down with your financial advisor and the attorney and implement some of the strategy I mentioned about.
Great. We do have some, audience questions. The first question is by Dr. Madali. If your home is not under your own name, then it's hard to get a loan slash HELOC, etc. for investment purposes.
Yes, so if that's the problem though. So if you're not buying in cash, if you have traditional mortgage, remember traditional mortgage for primary house. But remember, you can always buy the house under your name as long as you're doing a joint tax filing, husband wife unlimited. It's absolutely fine. You can gift it. You can always buy under your name and transfer it to the spouse. That's absolutely fine. Now, but what you cannot do is buy the primary house not under your name, under like a separate vehicle. That becomes very tough. So I absolutely agree. The HELOC or the traditional mortgage rate doesn't work. It needs to be ideally under your name. You buy first, you purchase it, and then you can think about doing transferring it to either your spouse if it's not joint already, or the if you're looking for advanced asset protection, which is the qualified residential trust.
Thank you. The next question is, this is set up by attorney. Can be both husband and wife as the owners, and money can be withdrawn for use and have control over it. This is what he said he understands for this option. I don't know which one it is for, but I
Um,
don't know.
s- so, um, so, so I think the question is, it is set up by husband and wife. Money can be withdrawn for use and have control over. This is what
Right.
the understanding. So, I think what this person is trying to say, um, if the attorney set up some sort of trust, and can both husband and wife as the owner and money can be withdrawn from it, as long as both of them are trustee of that particular trust set up by the attorney, they should be able to withdraw the money. Correct.
Perfect. Dr. Bikram Pal asked, in an average, how much does it cost to set up a will, probate, irrevocable trust, and asset protection, to set up the annual cost to maintain it, I guess.
Yeah. So basic will, power of attorney, health proxy cost between $800 to $1,000. Again, basic will, power of attorney, health proxy. You add now, imagine this way, trust. The word, every time I say trust, add on top of it $2,500. So trust, 25, 25, 25. So revocable trust means $2,500 on top of it. So $3,500 for will, trust, power of attorney, health proxy. These are for probate protection. Now, remember, I am talking about different strategy. Now, let's say, hey, I want to create a domestic asset protection trust. Here we go, another $25 to $3,000. I want to create an irrevocable trust, another 25 to 3,000. So every time trust on top of it, 25 to $3,000. Very expensive.
Great. The next question is, if you are employed and sued, does other assets at risk?
Yeah, most of the my experience has been the if you're employed and get sued, the malpractice is enough to cover it most of the time. So our recommendation is just make sure that your malpractice is strong enough. But we do recommend sometimes there are instances it went overboard. Malpractice is not enough to cover it. And a lot of times, we also recommend like the lawsuits are not really related to malpractice, like an employee sues you or your coworker sues you for harassment. I'm just talking about at the hospital. So those are the things I'm really worried about. So for those purpose, we also recommend, joint tenants by entirety, follow the state statute, LLC, limited partnership. Those are, I think, important as well, depending on your net worth.
Great. I think someone asked a question about sharing the this talk and as well as your contact information, which to answer the question, this will be posted on the website, and Mr. Nishat's information will be there to send out in an email from API office by tomorrow. So you should all receive that email. There is a question on, do the DAPT trusts have their own taxation, other tax implications?
Yeah, so DAPT, Domestic Asset Protection Trust, is irrevocable. Usually, in our case, I'm just talking about in our case, we usually have a separate tax ID. All right. But for tax purpose, you understand is disregarded entity because it doesn't file their own corporate tax. At then it comes down to individual level, individual 1040. That doesn't change. It's just a shield. Understand? So we usually have like a separate tax ID for because the assets held. Some attorney just says it's irrevocable, but for tax purpose, since it's disregarded entity, why should I have a tax ID? Can I just do it under own social security number? Yeah, fine. We do both. Both arguments are there, but usually our attorney, what they do, they have separate tax ID for that for tax purpose.
Thank you. The next question is, can you give an example of paying state tax from corporation?
Yeah. So, for example, my state, New York, the worst state for taxes. So, New York, they have New York state tax, which is 6%. On top of it, New York city tax as well. So, I'm just going to focus on New York state tax. So, let's say my income for tax purpose is $200,000. There's a federal tax, and there's a state tax on the 200,000. $12,000 is due. But unfortunately, I own. So I'm sitting in my son's room. Ayan, small room. You can see black window. So I own my place. My property tax is itself 10,000. So unfortunately, the $12,000 state tax I'm paying, I'm getting no deduction because my property tax is 10,000. Trump capped it, right? But if I have my own S corporation, I'm saying it, or multi-member LLC, and I'm self-employed, the same $12,000, if I just paid from the corporation, what happened is $12,000 federally I get right off. So my adjusted gross income from 200,000 will becomes 100 and 80,000 ballpark. I'm just giving examples. So no, sorry, 6% of 200 is 12,000, so 88,000, 188,000 ballpark. So hopefully it makes sense. So you get the write-off federally from the state tax, but your adjusted income federally goes down. So this is how the state tax work. Indirectly, you got the deduction.
What is the advantage of buying a house under your personal name or under a trust? Was the next question.
Yeah. So depending on what kind of trust you're talking about. So if you buy it under personal name, so if depending on the state you live in, and if you buy under revocable trust, the benefit of revocable trust is that if you pass away, the children doesn't have to worry about going through any probate, nothing whatsoever. Uh, but uh, but if it's an irrevocable trust, I think if you transfer it, if a lawsuit happen and the state doesn't have any asset protection for the primary house, you can gift the primary house under irrevocable trust or domestic asset protection trust. You can buy it, and the assets are protected. So depending on what your goals are, if your goals are uh, just to avoid probate, revocable trust, how should be under. If the idea is to protect the asset, one option could be having it under your wife's name, like the simple strategy I spoke about, or you can do it under one of the trusts I spoke about, which is irrevocable trust.
The next one was to go over the 5 tips that you stated prior to the meeting. We will be sending an email with all that, but unless Mr. Nishat, you want to go over it again, or we can just send everyone an email.
Yeah,
Whoever is joined.
we'll send everyone the email. We're already 44 minutes.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. The next question was, thanks for the comprehensive presentation. How much in the IRA is asset protected?
Yeah, it's not 100% though. Okay, just look at your state. How much is it? But I'm just giving you a range about 1.2, 1.5. Each state has the maximum asset protection, not 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Someone else asked, will there be a lecture on talk on will, trust, etc. later on?
We have a huge webinar. Remember, 600 physicians almost.
Yes.
You can email again. Yeah.
Yeah, we can send that
Yeah.
information. Dr. Amin, is it necessary to set up a separate bank account for a revocable living trust? He was wondering about paying taxes on the income generated by assets held within the RLT, such as real estate syndications.
Yeah. So usually the revocable trust, is it really necessary? So basically, the answer to the question is the whole purpose of revocable trust to avoid probate. All right. So if you have, let's say I'm giving an example, 500,000 sitting in the bank, ideally it should be under the name of the revocable trust to avoid the probate. But if you have like a $20,000, $30,000 checking account, it doesn't make sense to put it into revocable trust. What's the point? So yes, it should be under revocable trust. The syndication of the real estate or real estate income you're collecting from rental property, if it's under an LLC, each LLC ideally should have its own bank account, and all the rental income should go there. So that's why, remember, going back to the slide, we spoke about series LLC or management company. If you have a lot of real estate, you can open up a management company or series LLC. So in this way, you have multiple LLC, all the money funds can go there to simplify it. So again, a lot of things can be done depending on your situation, but the idea is all the important topics we just give it to you in today's webinar.
Well, the next is domestic asset protection trust foolproof in other states? They say the lawyers slash judgments in one state can access properties in DAPT in other states.
Yeah, depending on the judge. As I mentioned to you, nothing is 100% asset protected at all. I wish I would know it. Nothing can be guaranteed. None of these. All you can do is make sure that you create the DAPT. If a lawsuit happened, the assets are protected, the shields are there, the elements are there. But the state have stronger asset protection are Nevada, Delaware, Wyoming, Alaska. Very
Wow.
strong asset protection.
The next question was we have an irrevocable trust for many years. Talk about the importance of frequently updating the same every few years with additions of assets, changes in lifestyle, etc.
Yeah, it's very important though. So one of the mistakes we see, physicians, they create like a will and trust 10 years ago. They haven't updated it. They have, grandchildren, children. Their assets have grown substantially, and they move from one state to another state. For example, my clients move from New York to Florida all the time, and Florida has a different statutes, almost the same, but they have their own statutes. It's very important. Every 6 to 7 years, we recommend go back and update the statutes in a revocable and also irrevocable trust. Like Secure Act 2.0 came in. This needs to be implemented into the revocable trust nowadays, and also an irrevocable trust if the trust is the beneficiary of a retirement account. So it's very important that every 6 to 7 years revisit everything.
Okay, what happens to SLAT after the spouse's sudden death?
Yeah, so spouse's sudden death, unfortunately, the money belongs to the children. Remember the slat I spoke about. So the money completely belongs to the children at that time. But as long as your portion. So let's say, for example, Dr. Samadar, you contributed from your side, your husband contributed from his side, and if he passes away, unfortunately, you cannot access his portion. So that's the problem. So unfortunately, it only works if the spouse is alive.
Wonderful. Someone had the question they wanted to transfer their 5-year-old car to the son and grandson. How can they do it?
You can gift it, but then as long as the value is below, husband wife together below $34,000, you're okay. But if it's more than that, you have to file for gift taxes. But there's no gift tax due up to 24 million. Remember.
Okay. Could you go into estate planning? Someone wanted information on estate planning. So it's
Yeah,
something we can
we
talk
can
about
we can
later.
send the recording that we did last time.
Yeah, from the previous one. In that case, paying state tax from S Corp, is that the business paying for the employee?
No, so no, it's not true though. So if you pay the state tax, well, estate tax, right?
Yeah, state
STAT,
tax. Yeah.
yeah, it's an expense, correct, from the corporation, correct.
Okay. Dr. Inamdar, are series LLCs jointly liable or individual silos for asset protection?
Yeah, so Series LLC give you the asset protection in and out. So yes, so usually the owner of the Series LLC could be joint, or the person who's non-physician should be under the owner of that, and you can basically control it. And each LLC have their own protection under the Series LLC.
Okay. What is the ceiling for probate?
Well, there's no seal. It's not like a ceiling for probate. What basically the question is that how long is the probate, and which state you live in. So probate with time is becoming easier. So usually there's a cost involved, 3.5% for the probate, but probates are getting easier depending on the state you live in. So depending on the assets you have it, but the more is the assets, we recommend is the revocable trust. But if it's just simple, assets like just the assets and a retirement account, I think trust is not needed. Will and proper designation should do it.
Okay, is it better to dissolve a FLP once a doctor retires?
Yeah, I mean FLP can go for perpetuity. I'm just saying it, but FLP give asset protection as long as like you have multi-member LLC. Why dissolve it? Unless like the spouse pass away, so then there's no multi-member in the FLP. So then you do have to dissolve it. And then FLP, there is one-time setup fee. There is a filing fee involved into it. So if you completely retire, no liability. One argument can be made to dissolve it, but we usually keep it.
Advice on protecting assets from child spouse in case of children's divorce.
Yeah, so remember the irrevocable trust, you can put provisions there. Irrevocable trust, if as long as the children inherit through there. So that's why we always recommend gift it to an irrevocable trust, because once you gift it to an irrevocable trust, if a divorce happen, last would happen, all the assets are protected. So don't gift it under their individual name, gift it through irrevocable trust. We highly recommend.
Okay, when your spouse, you or your spouse pass away and your children inherit money, property, IRAs, and they are physicians, are the inherited assets safe from malpractice
Yeah.
lawsuits?
Yeah, so remember, your revocable trust after you pass away by law becomes irrevocable. Irrevocable. So that's why we always recommend have a revocable trust. So husband wife both pass away, that revocable by law will becomes irrevocable, and children inherit the irrevocable. As long as the funds stays in irrevocable trust, it is protected from divorce, lawsuits, any creditor issue. So it's very powerful.
Can both husband and wife do slats?
Oh yeah, slats are designed for husband wife.
Okay, so some last minute estate tax questions, Sayed. Some states have their own state tax after certain amount. How do you avoid it?
Yeah, just a couple of last minute because we only have 7 minutes left, and a lot of question. So New York, Illinois, for example, they are state tax, but there's a state tax as well. It's for example, New York over 5 million, there is state tax. So one option could be in the into the trust document, create something called QTIP provision, QTIP, QTIP provision. In a QTIP provision, what happened? The tax after husband passed away deferred to the spouse. After the spouse passed away, only then there's a state tax. Depending on the state you live in, but hopefully the spouse moved to a state like Florida or Texas where there's no inheritance tax or state tax, so it will be helpful. So again, for those states, there is a state tax on top of the federal tax. You can think about the QT provision.
Wonderful. Can you please elaborate how charitable planning can save physicians in income tax and estate tax?
Yeah, so the different type of charity like donor fund, private foundation, charitable lead trust, and charitable remainder trust. But I will just touch base very quickly about charitable lead trust for charity purpose. So, for example, you want to give 500,000 to a charity. I'm just giving an example, Dr. Samadar. But you don't want to gift it all in one go. You want to create in such a way in a charitable lead trust that you give 500,000. The money belongs to charity, but there's any way the money goes back to your family estate tax free. That's called charitable lead trust. So what happened? Like I'm just going giving you a slide here. You are a donor. There's a trust. You create a charitable lead trust. You donate the appreciated stock. You get full deduction. You can design the charitable lease in trust in such a way that every year this trust will give money to the charity, which is usually about 5%. 5% the charity gives money to the trust give money to the charity. In 20 years, all the money has been given to the charity. Usually, Dr. Samadar, if you invest any money, like T-bills nowadays, they easily give 5%. So the goal is that 100% you have given to the trust goes to the charity, but whatever is remainder goes back to the family. So it's called charitable lead trust. So in our math perspective, let's say put $500,000 every year, 25,000 goes to the charity. You can invest the money that can generate $25,000, but after the year of 20 years, the 500,000 may become 750,000 because of the growth of the stock market, and all 750 can go back to the family tax free. So again, it's very powerful. If you're a very high net worth individual, you can think about charitable lead trust, charitable remainder trust. The detail it is this is out of the scope of today's presentation, but a lot of physicians don't do it. So again, if you're charity minded, before December 31st, you can create a charitable lead trust or charitable remainder trust or private foundation, and stuff like this can work fine.
Thank you, Mr. Nishad. This was such a wonderful presentation, and we are looking forward to giving you giving us more inputs about tax planning and other presentations pretty soon. It seems to be a very popular event, but I would like to thank you and your team for everything you've contributed for our members.
Thank you, Dr. Samadar, again, and Dr. Sumal Rawal, both of you, for arranging this webinar. Again, this is educational webinar. Please make sure you speak to your attorney and financial advisor because these are ideas. The implementation is depending on your individual circumstances. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
everything. Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.